I like his background because he's chopped my head and then like look like this is actually now in it's recorded for live. Which
that looks like a fake background, but I know it's not.
Right?
It looks so perfect.
I did it a while ago. Like, is that like this is a really cool background? And then I saw people moving. How do you do that?
That's because it's so clean.
All right, so we're online.
Great.
So let's say hello to everybody. Maybe we introduce ourselves. And then the idea, since you and I are going to have a conversation about the future of design. So there's a bunch of really cool and interesting questions I have, and I hope you have some for me. So why don't you go ahead and start introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia Tom. I am the founder and principal at Futurity Systems, and we are a studio that provides features as a service, and that means that from research and analysis all the way to experiment and prototyping, we're very much geared towards designing for better and faster and better futures for companies and organizations.
Cool, thank you, Ceci. My name is Germán León. I'm the coordinator of the Masters in User Experience. I'm also the co-founder of a company called Gestus. It's an artificial intelligence that allows objects, spaces, and vehicles to be able to see and understand human behavior. My background is in interaction design. I'm also a technologist and an entrepreneur. And as a designer, talking to my fellow designer, Ceci, I saw a post that you presented that was very interesting, and you said that the metaverse could potentially exclude people. Could you expand on that? Why would that be the case? Why would it be the metaverse excluding parts of our society?
Well, right now the metaverse is very green and it's being built, and it's being built in a very fragmented way because the very definition of the metaverse is a distributed, construction and foundation, and so it's a good thing and a bad thing. Bad thing in the sense that because it is so fragmented, it's very complex and it's very complicated to enter. So the barrier to enter into the metaverse, to participate, to even buy, an NFT, for example. If you're not familiar with NFT is non-fungible tokens, and these are digital assets that one can buy on the metaverse. And a recent study showed that there's only about 500,000 NFT owners in the whole entire world. That's nothing.
That's nothing, yeah.
That's nothing. That's nothing. And so why is it so hard? Because, there's so many different cryptos, there's so many different platforms, there's just the lingos and the understanding is just way too hard for people to enter. And so if this continues, then a lot of people will not want to get into it and will not have the ability to enter it. And then what will happen is that the metaverse will be built by those that are already in it and be built their way instead of the way that is, best for all. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I actually read recently that the purchase of tokens has reduced like dramatically, like almost 400%. I think that the daily average is reduced dramatically. Why do you think is that? Is it because of the lack of infrastructure?
Well, there's the hype cycle, and there is, there has been a lot more. There's a separation of what's called, general NFTs and then utility NFTs, and I think there's a migration. There's general NFTs are your JPEG images of what's quote unquote unique renderings of a particular, rendering of a monkey or rendering of whatever people feel like they CryptoPunks, for example, and those are great and valid, and there's a good exploration of what NFTs can do. But then there are a whole new family of utility NFTs that I'm really excited about because those are really driven by, for example, there's an impact driven NFT that is looking to apply in universal basic income. And those kind of NFTs are growing, but they're also more complex. And so I don't know how they come up with these numbers of the drop, but maybe the volume of the creation of NFTs has created a massive pool of NFTs, but the number of NFT owners remain small. And so maybe that juxtaposition
there isn't a platform, right? There isn't something like Coinbase where you can just buy NFTs, because by definition, it's not connected to a specific type of coin, correct? Or
Correct. So you have OpenSea, that's one platform. You have Magic Eden, that's another platform, and they all operate in different coins, and some of them are multi-chain, and it is very, very complex. And so there's no interoperability. Also, right now, if you buy, say, for example, you buy from OpenSea, how do you bring that into, say, in Decentraland? Which is a platform for, and then if you buy an asset in Decentraland or a land, literally a real estate, well, how do you bring it so that you can see it at home? You can't. There's absolutely zero interoperability between these different platforms and currency, and certainly none into our real world. And so there are two layers of complexity right there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So the topic of today panel is a little bit about the future of design. In a way, we try to explain that the design as it is dying. It's disappearing. And so you could argue that technologies like this one, which is enabling AI systems to be able to create even basic designs and monetize them, kind of takes away completely that process for traditional designers that have been perhaps working on logotypes or pure visuals. What do you think about that? And the consecutive question of that, it would be, do you think we are actually building systems and we're designing scenarios where our own profession will disappear?
we have that question all the time. Well, let's go by question one first. I think that we are still a little bit far from AI replacing us as designer, because I think there is a major component of us being designer that AI hasn't solved, which is designers have a cultural understanding of society. Sorry. Excuse me, my dog. So that understanding is an underlying layer that I think it will take still quite some time for artificial intelligence to catch up, and that gives a kind of touch, and a subtlety and the kind of the experience that I think is very, very hard to replicate for now. So I think there's still value in designers. And on to your second question about replacing us, I think it's great. I think I hate to work. I just wanted to retire and just eat chocolate all day long. So if AI can do my work, I mean, what if let me put it this way. I hope one day that AI could replace all of my, grunt work, all of the unpleasant work, and all of the repetitive work. And then I could really enjoy doing things that is impactful, doing things that I enjoy, doing things, and that wouldn't be work anymore. And so, and it's up to us to design what that system looked like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the misconception about artificial intelligence in general has been that there is, perhaps Terminator helped, and also Elon Musk tweets said that helped definitely a lot, bring this doom scenario of the world's going to end and the super AI is going to sort of make us disappear. But many of us that are in this space know that AIs are actually really, really basic, not to say stupid, but almost. And they're really good at one task in particular that you design for that task. And therefore, in that specific task, they can have superhuman levels. And so in that task, they can replace some of the tasks that we do. But I believe that and to your point, and to the work that you guys are doing, I believe that the role of the designer, it needs to adapt to the fact that we're going to be less and less tools-driven sort of profession where you can use, Photoshop to create a visual design, or you use a specific platform to create a flow of a prototype. and you hire more of a person that is questioning how we live life, and we do a lot of the exercise in regards of how that creativity and how we design that future living that we want to have, because it cannot be imposed, right? There's no way that an AI is going to impose or decide for us what we want to do. So you guys, I mean, first of all, you're like a superhero in the design community here in Barcelona, one of our icons, successful female entrepreneur, great designer. You yourself reinvented yourself. You have a background in architecture. You're working in deep tech, and you're actually designing futures. Tell us a little bit about the Futurity Studio. Tell us a little bit about your work and that journey, because I think that's really, really inspiring for many people out there that are listening.
So I started my career studying biology, and I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't get good enough grades and couldn't get into medical school. That was the story. And then me being, I don't know if you can tell, I'm Chinese. So being, a good Chinese, you only have 3 professions to choose from. So you're either an eye banker, a doctor, or a lawyer. They are the 3 choices. And so I picked being a doctor, and that didn't work out. So I told my mom I wanted to go into architecture, and she got upset at me. And so she said, unless I get into Harvard, I'm not going to go into architecture school. And somehow, magically, I got in, and I loved architecture. Yeah. Not because of architecture's sake. I love architecture because it bridged between 2 very opposite worlds, which is the conceptual design, imaginary world. And then I have to bridge it with the very structural, very rigorous, very formal understanding of architecture. And I think that served me in what I do today, because I'm always bridging between, working in deep tech and science. I have to bridge the understanding of the limitations of what science and technology can do into kind of push those limits and try to apply it to the imagination of the future scenario. And that's what we do at Futurity Systems, right? Where we try to imagine the possible, and then we have this validation of the 3 horizons, where we start with something that we imagined, and then we start asking our question, well, is this scientifically possible? And there we look into patents, we look into research, and once we have validated that threshold, then we go to the second question, which is, well, can we actually scale it up? And that's an engineering question, right? And so then we look at patents, and we look at understanding of how it is applied and how it could be scaled up. And then the next question up would be a business question. Can we actually create a sustainable business model from there? So you can imagine going from design to engineering all the way to strategy and business. And it is really a transversal application of pushing the limitations of what our imagination and science can do.
That is really cool. Because you mentioned 3 things that it's a constant debate amongst my students. So the first one is like, why am I seeing so much business classes in this when I'm studying? and you tapped onto it, right? I mean, it's about not only creating or bridging that imagination gap of potential future. It's got to live in the real world, and the real world has to do with economics. So to a certain extent, as the designer, you need to be able to create new business models. You need to imagine new concepts, speak the language, and even model mathematically or financially, what is that going to look like, right? So do you go that far with Futurity, or do you stay only in the conceptual space?
Do we what? I didn't catch the question.
Do you go as far as modeling, the future business, or do you guys stay on the sort of concept design bit?
No, we're very much into prototyping. And so we built tangible prototypes because until we don't have kind of the physical manifestation of those prototypes, it's very hard for us to understand the limitations and the second and third and fourth iterations of what those things could turn out. And so, yeah, we built prototypes as a way to gain insights. And we actually separate 3 levels of prototypes. And so in the very first level, it's a conceptual prototype, right? You're just trying to, it's a video, it's an illustration. And this is just a way to communicate a particular idea, right? And the second level of prototype, we call it experiential. And so here we replicate the experience. So it's not the real thing, but you're giving, for example, could be, if I'm building an app, it could be just literally a hand-drawn, post-it notes for every screenshot, so that the user can replicate that experience of understanding how to navigate that app, right? And then this particular prototype is to get feedback from users. And then the last one is a functional prototype. This is hardware, this is software, this is like really drilling down into the functionality of it. And then the last one is really an MVP, right? Of the product. And then there you're really testing out, are people going to buy it? Are they going to, put money into that MVP? And so every single project migrates into the maturity until it arrives to an MVP and then spin off to a business, a venture.
Yeah. It's very, the way you describe it, of course, being a designer, I understand it really well, but it's also for people in business. It sounds like, the Lean Startup methodology, or it sounds like very Silicon Valley type of techniques, which is like, build, learn, iterate kind of loop, and then get to a point that you can actually create something that scales. So that's another thing. I don't know if designers were starting to really get extremely close to the startup world. And is it because of our profession? What do you think? I mean, you've been in startups, we were at Alpha at a certain point. You have multiple businesses. What do you think that new role of the designer is going to gear towards?
I think that's such a hard question. I think that the role of the designer really is to be able to bridge multiple spaces and multiple kind of understanding territories. I say that because designing is almost like, you have these ingredients over here, you have, almost like a cook, almost like a chef. And you need to be able to know what to put when and how and what. It's a question of construction, right? And on one hand, these ingredients are getting more and more, abundance of these ingredients. And on the other hand, the tools of building them is also becoming more and more. And so the role of the designer will be to catch up to speed. What are these ingredients? What are these tools? How do you combine these two? And going back to your comments about where AI can play, well, AI can play to help out, to build out maybe 80% of this, and then the 20% of it will be humans making decisions or making the kind of the final customizable output. And so I think this will this will shift a little bit as we have more and more more elements to play with.
I think the now is truly like that. I feel like AI is becoming, there are more tools that use AI to do a specific task that still leave you hanging. So ultimately, you need to have the human input in order for that AI to fully function or to complete its purpose. But do you believe it's gonna get to a point where it's going to replace that human aspect? Do you think we could get to that point in the next, I don't know, 30, 100 years? Just to be provocative here.
I do think so. Actually, I do think so. I think it will get good enough that it will replace some of the, but I do think, consider those as grunt work, right? I mean, I don't think humans I don't think that I am placed on this world to work my butt off every day, 80 hours a day. I am placed on this earth to enjoy life, to, have impactful, work towards humanity. And so I think it's a question of what is work. What is the future of work? What does it even mean to work anymore, right? And then we can go off to like the philosophical, understanding.
I want to go there big time. This is the intro to go there. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And this is weird, which is really nice talking to you, because I know you're comfortable talking about these crazy things, and we have had conversations. I gotta go there. So yeah, let's assume that, okay, yeah. Like you, I believe that it is essentially a lot of the things that today we do will be replaced. And the 8-hour work, the 8 hour per day, the 40-hour work week, it's absolutely going to disappear over time. That's not what people say in Silicon Valley. There is more like 80 hours a week. And, Elon Musk says like 160 hours a week. I don't even know. you could humanly possibly do that. But anyways, that is definitely a null model. So the question is, given the fact that, we're talking about the future of design, isn't it time to start asking if the status quo is the right one? Isn't it time to start saying like, hey, listen, we had a pandemic, people actually managed to work from home. People with children actually managed to spend more time with their children because they were at home and they could see things that, you could not see when they were, their areas. And the fact that the world's completely shifting, why are we kind of imposing a status quo, a society, economic status quo that makes no sense? What are your thoughts about that? And I have
because it's always easier to stay in one spot to conserve energy, right? And then it's always hard for society to change. But COVID forced people to change in ways that we didn't imagine. And now that people gotten used to this new change, they don't want to go back. And what I think is super interesting is that all of a sudden companies realize that things that boundaries that they didn't think could cross, like working from home, have been crossed. And then they are starting to think, oh, what other boundaries could we open up? And I think that's going to be a really interesting challenge for both companies and employees. And we were talking about the metaverse earlier, and we had this super interesting conversation about metaverse economy. And I don't want to bring this back up, but it has something to do with the future of work. But
I was going to bring it back again, but anyway, so
yeah. But like in metaverse economy, and with the whole kind of trend of distributed finance, and how will government even be able to track and tax people in the metaverse, right? And we're moving towards that direction. And what does the metaverse of work looks like, and how there are a lot more questions than we do have answers. And you were saying, like, is it now time to ask these questions? Is it better or not to stay in the status quo? Not only do we have to ask those questions, I think we have to start rehearsing possible outcomes. And by rehearsing, I mean, like, why not we do a thought exercise of what if X, Y, and Z had happened? What if, let's play one scenario, then, the metaverse is completely dominated by Facebook. What would that look like? Let's say that it's the other extreme and say, no, it's, 100% distributed by every individual. What does that look like? And then, play out 10, 20, 100 scenarios, just so that we can have not only imagine, but say, no, this is not the future we want, and this is the future we want, and be very intentional about which direction we wanted to take, and be proactive about building those futures that we want.
That the construct of the metaverse could become that simulation environment to start playing. I fully agree, because they're really hard and difficult questions, yeah, and they go to the core of beliefs of different people, yeah. So when we talk about AI and we talk about the lack of, the fact that a lot of jobs are being replaced, and there's a lot of, for instance, manufacturing jobs that they're inevitably going to disappear. And it's not because there's no political will or the companies don't want to hire people. It's because a machine does it more efficiently and most cost effective, and is the safest way to do actually a particular task. So that's just, that ship's gone. That is going in that direction. And so there will be a handful of companies, well, a handful is an exaggeration, but let's say there will be a great number of companies, but there will not be enough jobs, right? And so what happens when we look into this scenario where everybody has a universal income? How does that affect people? How does that take because we live in a culture where you need to kind of thrive, and you need to aim for higher goals, and you need to have a purpose, and all of that stuff kind of vanishes, right? And then comes the political discussion, and also the parents start thinking like, well, but how do I encourage my children to be better, because there's no better, right? Other people will defend the idea like, no, this will empower people to go into arts, and we will have better musicians, because there's not a feel like, how are you going to eat at the end of the month? It's taking cover, but it's this construct that we're being sold, because I don't know. First of all, one thing I want to ask you, and this is to clarify for everybody, metaverse is not necessarily Facebook or Meta, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's correct.
No, it's absolutely nothing to do with. I mean, they're riding the wave. They have also created the wave, part of
Yeah.
the wave, but yeah, definitely it's not of equivalence. And metaverse is.
Go on. I'm sorry.
Oh no, metaverse is being built by many different people, platform, crypto. You know, it's very extremely fragmented right now. Facebook, Meta, it's just a small part of it.
Correct. So for many people, they probably heard metaverse for the first time through the announcement that Mark Zuckerberg did when he changed the name of the company and sort of create the the metaverse expression, and everybody run into that space. But there's a higher level, right? We're talking about a completely new internet. We're talking about Web 3.0. We're like sort of linking a lot of very interesting technologies to it. And in a way, we're creating a new, I would say, a new type of AI that is networked. And that is very big. That sounds like we don't even know the kind of things that can possibly be built in a future scenario where Web 3.0 it's happening. So you've experimented in futures, and so many people think about like, yeah, okay, the AI can do an AI can do a painting or a drawing, and that's it. But what kind of things that you've experienced with where it will be completely mind blowing or surprise us? If you can share some of those projects and things that you do, that'll be great.
Oh wow, there's a lot. And before I share some of the projects, I wanted to kind of share my kind of thoughts of where we are in this migration. You know, I don't know how familiar people are with Web3 as a concept. So let's visit that a little bit just so we can clarify. So Web1 is your basic internet, like sending emails and being able to visit a website. So it's one directional. So I can go and see a website, or I can send an email to you. Web2 is very much about big tech platform. And so here we see like social media, we see Facebook, we see, big companies like Amazon. Here it's read and write, right? It's two directional. So the platform allows for me as a user to post things, and then people can receive and consume this information. And what's interesting here is the shift, especially on the topic of trust. Because all of a sudden in Web 2, you have this massive, sea of information, and we required a platform like Facebook, like Amazon, as kind of a stamp of trust, so that people can share or, have a way to consume in an authenticated way. What is really interesting about Web3 and this kind of distributed web, so Web3 and D-Web, I think it's exactly the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what I think is really interesting is this understanding of how the distributed web and blockchain allowed the trust to be on the level of the individual. And so all of a sudden you're bypassing anything centralized, any of the big tech, any of the platform. So all of a sudden the empowerment is distributed. And I think that's super, super, super interesting. Like every single technology, though, there's a dark side to this, and there's a bright side to this. And the dark side is that obviously everyone knows that, like, blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin and all of that stuff have been, very much used in the dark web. And because it's, you can hide, there's transparency, but then there's, that you don't know where it is from. But then on the upside.
But it protects your privacy, and that also allows you to do criminal stuff, right? So
exactly. And on the upside, you have this ability to place trust on the individual end, so that you can make transactions that are trustworthy. So I'm really excited to see how that dichotomy will be built out. We're seeing one of the interesting project, you asked about projects, so I'm going to share one of the projects that we are working on. Which is the Plantiverse project, and so because the ability for trust on the individual level has opened up, why are we only limited to trust on a human level. Why not opening up to non-human beings? And I mean, it sounds crazy, right? But
it's really cool. And I have to send you a link afterwards, but we'll talk about it more. Yeah, please go. Yeah.
So basically, Plantiverse, we started up with this idea of, well, what if we give plants autonomy? And by autonomy, we means we're talking about giving it ability to make decisions. And so we have this plant at the office called Herbie, Herbiebot, and Herbie has, he's on wheels. They are on wheels. I'm not sure what pronoun to use, but Herbie on wheels and have sensors, and then Herbie can navigate when they need water, go to water source, when they need light, and need light source.
Wow,
which is great.
Wait. This is really cool. You're going super fast, and I need to break it down a little bit for people hearing. So Herbie tells you when it's thirsty.
Correct. So Herbie, because it has sensors, and so when the water sensor is low, and because they are on wheels, it will just go to a water source and get water for himself, for themselves. Or when the light source as the light sensor is low, it goes to the somewhere with light and can get sunlight. And so, but we started to push the limit on that and say, well, if they can make these decisions, what other decision can they make? And we said, well, what if Herbie is a herb plant and can come to you, Herman, and said, do you want to buy my herb leaves? And so if Herbie can sell things, can they have a bank account? If they can have bank account, can they have ownership and buy things? And can they have rights to vote? Can they have citizenship? Can they have? So it was a thought exercise to understand whether a plant can have some level of autonomy and rights. And it sounds absolutely crazy, but it wasn't that long ago when, we had slavery and we didn't think that we considered other races were subhumans, and we didn't think that they should have rights. Women weren't allowed to vote, only a couple of decades ago. So, what if in the future that plants have this ability to, have a presence? And we thought that there are no better ways, how are we going to manifest all of this empowerment? There's no better way than in the metaverse, where we can create a digital twin of these plants into the metaverse. And this is the project of the Plantiverse, where we created these digital twins via these sensors. And then we created a visualization, and we call them NF trees. And then we sell these NF trees. Actually, the plant themselves sells these NF trees, and 80% of the proceeds will go directly into funding initiatives for sustainable costs, and then the rest.
There you go. That's my question. I knew it was going to go somewhere. Cool.
Yeah. So that's an example. So why are we doing this, and how to link back to the conversation of trust is that all of a sudden this ability to place trust on an individual level allow the plant as in the metaverse to have that level of trust to be able to make transactions without the need of a human. And so that's kind of sort of the logic behind that particular project.
Yeah. But I do know that these plants actually, when they're creating their digital twin, they're represented in a visual format in the metaverse, correct? So they're essentially kind of like the real plant is, in a way, designing its virtual self in the metaverse. And there's a token associated with it, right? So if we were to make the metaphor, okay, what if the plant could design? And and if the plant is a designer and the design is actually, there you go, beautiful, a virtual representation of itself, and it has a value because it's a token associated to it, it means that you just killed the designer for a plant. Obviously, I'm taking it extremely far, but there it is. Share a little bit about this that you're representing here.
Definitely. So in this particular design, we actually did design the tree itself and the rendering, right? So here, let me show you this. So here I wanted to illustrate how the different sensors are actually paired with the visualization. I'm gonna have to apologize for the noise. There's construction next door. But each of the sensors, the temperature, for example, correspond to the tree size, and the soil humidity here is the branch length. And so we're still giving it a design component, but on the top of that layer is a algorithmic generation of 500 trees that are based on the reading. And so there's, the 80-20 that I talked about, the 20% is this human touch, this final touch. And then this is 80% of it. And so we're also creating a 3D version of it here that you can see where using augmented reality, we can actually plant these trees in our real world. And so kind of looping back on how can we experience these digital things in our physical world. And so I think there's still room to play here as designers on how these experiences.
I mean, some design decisions on that GIF that you're showing us for that animated tree there, these are yours, right? I mean, the plant's not designed for the colors, but the shape is there. The shape is that.
Correct.
So yeah, taking this to a different level, if we could educate different entities. Okay, I have to share this with you. I don't have the link right here, but there. Have you ever heard of Picasso?
No.
Picasso is a pig that paints. I have to send you this because it's. So this woman, it's a fad right now. It's super popular in Germany. So Picasso is a pig, obviously, and it's painting. And you could have a video of the pig painting with his nose and with actual brushes, and create this art. And so that video, that timestamped, and then it's turned into an NFT, and it's being sold online. And it's actually beautiful. First of all, it's crazy. You have to I'll have to send you the link. But again, that's another example where you are completely replacing an artist for a pig, because who knew that pig also have the ability to express themselves artistically? Yeah. I don't know how many pigs they trained to get to that point, but or maybe it was not training, maybe it was a discovery. It turns out that the pig learned about it. But there it is. So we're looking into a future that sometimes sounds a little bit freaky. Are we moving into let's go philosophical now. Are we moving into I feel like we have just too little time because this is going to go so in depth. Okay, going if you're like tapping into plants, animals, other living entities. And we're starting to extract data from all these different entities, and we're starting to see behaviors, and we're starting to see, I wouldn't call it emotions, but let's say inputs that are really valuable about the specific characteristics of this living being. Can we say that this Web 3.0 and the universes and the futures that are being created are bringing us closer to this collective intelligence? Could that be a good way of a positive way of interpreting what's going on, or are we building our own very crazy scenario where the plants are going to get back to us because they know that?
Well, we have not been very nice to them, so I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to get back. We have been extraordinarily human-centric for many years, and I think there is an equilibrium that we needed to arrive to. And I say that because, we, this comment of human centricity, and that we have been putting ourselves as a center point for so long, kind of, obviously caused a lot of the issues and consequences that we're living in now: climate change, privacy, like the list goes on and on and on and on. So I think this collective intelligence actually might, and I am making the assumption of understanding that when we say collective, we're beyond humans, right? We're talking about planets, we're talking about animals, we're talking about plants. When we incorporate them into the equation of the stability of our, planetary stewardship, then and only then can we have harmony, right? Because otherwise, we are just, always putting human on first, and we're just going to consume. And as we know it, the population is growing. We're insatiable. And I want to take this opportunity to kind of introduce another project that we're working on, not as a promotion, but as a kind of a thought exercise for us anyway. It's this project called Solve the Store of Future Things. And basically it's
I was going to ask you about it, so don't worry. I was actually asking you about it. Yeah. Okay,
so it's
question, yeah, go for it.
And it's a physical store, and we sell digital things. So these digital things are, your NFTs, and NFTs we mentioned earlier. It could be a video, it could be a JPEG, it could be, a 3D object, it could be anything that is in a digital format, right? And why are we doing this? Because, one of the thought exercise that we are thinking of testing is this, because we have been so insatiable in our consumption and irresponsible in our consumption, we're thinking that if there's a possibility for us to separate pleasure shopping or hedonic shopping from utility or functional shopping. So we're talking about food over here, and we're talking about your 50th pair of shoes over here. If we can separate those things, can we then replace these pleasure shopping with digital goods? Do I really need 5 vases on my bookshelf that I never use? And if I can replace them as augmented reality vases and I can equally enjoy them, then will I save the kind of the material of our natural resources and be a more responsible consumer in this future? I don't know, but it is a thesis that I would like to test out.
So soft is first question. It's an acronym. So SOFT means something specifically. Tell me about
it. Means the store of future things. So and what are these future things?
Yeah, whatever. Who knows? I agree. No, having worked with retailers, I think it's really brave what you're doing to tell you, well, when we at our origins at Justice, we work with a lot of retailers, and we were trying to sell the idea of this, a new way of representing data and your all your different products that you want. You have physically, you have a limitation, right? And then throughout this process, investors and people came to us and said, like, why are you trying to fix retail? You can't fix retail. You need to reinvent it because it's doomed. Is this an exercise for you to help retailers rethink themselves? Oh, this is a pure intellectual exercise for you to sort of explore this new medium that it's being brought to us?
So remembered earlier, we talked about different phases of prototypes and conceptual, experiential, and we started out as a kind of a conceptual prototype, and somehow very, very rapidly, because the whole entire metaverse conversation, it's like going at lightning speed. Now it has turned into an MVP, and a very fundable MVP. So I think we didn't set out as a venture. Now it had turned into a venture. And the question about disrupting retail, one of the reasons why it had pivoted into an MVP is because we are getting requests by companies because they don't know how to enter into the metaverse. They don't know what is a strategy. They don't know what are some of the how to even approach technologically speaking, how do you approach it? So we created a full stack of, like, from the business end, how can brands incorporate into the, if someone, let's say, a clothing brand wants to sell digital clothes, well, they can just plug it in, and we have the text stack to be able to incorporate that. And then on the consumer end, we also kind of resolves all the friction of having different crypto wallets and understanding how to navigate the whole entire crypto space. We kind of collapse that and make it frictionless so that they can pay with Google Pay or Apple Pay or even their credit card, and they can buy these NFTs. And the last bit is to experience this themselves. So we kind of have the whole entire stack of coming to the store, buying something with their credit card, taking it home, and then with geolocation they can actually plant these different digital assets in their own home, and they can view it and experience it. And so
I tell you what you need to do in stuff that you haven't done yet. It's gonna be, you have to create a trademark cocktail, the Softini.
The Softini.
Softini, which it's gotta be like the Plantaverse, a representation of my digital drunk self.
I love it.
And I think we need to get that, Ceci. I think this is really high on our priorities. We have to. No, I really love and enjoy the work you guys are doing. This is fantastic. It's super, super inspiring. And I think you're spot on. I mean, that the biggest, let's say, challenge for many upcoming designers is to dare to create things and really dare to think beyond what they typically see. There's this obsession that design is about beauty or like creating something that is delightful. But there is, I think, an underlying situation. You exposed it. We are in a social shift, in a cultural shift, in an economical shift. No one's prepared for that. And there is one thing that we just experienced, which is the pandemic. We're going into a global, global warming climate crisis up front. We don't even know how to tackle that. And then we're going to have an economical one, which is that we're starting to see right now the implications of the war in Ukraine, how it's attacking everything. So there are no ways to really be able to tackle those big issues. And the crazy, the only people that are equipped and have the tools to bridge the imagination gap of that future and into this present are designers, because this is what we do every day. And I believe that 20%, I fully agree with you, that 20% that we add with all the prototyping tools and all that stuff is the most important one, because without it, it's just a tool or it's just a platform. Super cool, Ceci. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. So I have two last questions for you. The first one, where it's a comment. If you wanted to give people that are jumping in the design space, whether they're old or young or whatever, people that are studying in the UX space, what would be your advice? That's number one. And question number two, if you have a favorite book that designers or people that are interested in this need or must read, what would that book be?
Oh, you're throwing the hard question at the end. Okay, the first question is what advice I would give, was that it, to designers? I think that it is absolutely necessary for you to get very broad experiences. So from, in the business context, as well as in the, in the making context, as well as, so get a really broad experience, because I can't emphasize how important it is that your job is to bridge all of these different parts together. So that's one. And the second question about the book. And so I'm a big fan of Stuart Brand. And Stuart Brand has a book called The Clock of the Long Now. It was written in 1999. It's an older book, but I like this book because it has this one framework that it is my Bible, and that framework is called the pace layer, and it separates the pace of change. And so, if you give me 1 minute, I'll explain it so that. So on the bottom layer is nature, and so as you go up, you have nature, you have culture, then you have infrastructure, commerce, and all the way to fashion. So the top layer is really fast changing layer, and the bottom layer is slow changing layers. But you need the whole entire system, because the top layer, while it changes fast, it is where innovation occurs. It is where new experimental things happen. But the lower layer, they are the ones that provide for stability, for structure, for expertise, right? And as the innovation filters down, that's when you get absorbed into the infrastructure, into the the bottom stability layer. And so I'm mentioning this model because this our world actually required the level for us to arrive to resiliency. This model needs to be in equilibrium. And let me just give you a really quick example of what happens when this is disrupted. COVID is on the bottom layer. It is biology. So that, because we have disrupted that layer, every single layer above it has been disrupted. So you can look at culture, the traditions. You can look at infrastructure, which is or governance, right? Regulations, laws. You can look at the infrastructure, schools, hospitals, commerce, the way we work, and then all of a sudden, all the way to the top, fashion, where we wear a mask. Every single one of these layers were disrupted, right? So this giving a mental map of how innovation and design could affect, not just our immediate, our lifetime, but way beyond that, all the way to the biology layer, is what we need to think about, which is long-term thinking. And so with that, I'm going to end with that understanding of, let's not think about, 10, 20 years of runway. Let's think about 100, 1,000, 10,000 of beyond our, understanding of time.
Really cool. Haven't read the book. It's right now on my ASAP to-do list, and it's something to read. Thank you so much, Ceci. You're an inspiration. Please do not
Thank
forget.
you.
We need it urgently. It's really important.
Thank you so much for having me. That was fun.
Yeah. See you soon, and we keep in touch. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.